Yeah.
Hey, so I'm wondering how this project influences your romantic relationships that you have outside of your art or your work, and whether you see a difference between the way that you love somebody as like an intimate partner and the way that you love somebody as a piece of your art.
Well, it's really interesting. When I first started doing this project, I was somebody that was part of why I started the project. Was somebody that had, I was married for 12 years. I had 3 children, but I had been in many romantic relationships before my marriage and after my marriage, and I started falling in love really young. And actually, when I started the project, I actually did not get in a relationship for a while, which was the first time for me. Mostly because I was so compelled by the work. And, I had a few little affairs. And then kind of the last couple of years I was in a relationship actually just ended and was really interesting. And actually, if you go to my website, there's a link to my blog, which was a lot about that relationship, because I considered that, even though, it was highly intimate, was a real love affair, I considered that a love project. Because by that point, I was just thinking about love all the time. So there, on the blog, I wrote, 2 years of the relationship, I wrote a lot about it, and really looked at, sort of scientifically how I was feeling, after being in love and talking to so many people about love. And I think that the way it affected me is actually really positive, in one hand, because I was a lot less attached to my ego about what being in love meant, as far as having specialness. It is special, but I also, also I was older too, but I just felt a lot more freedom. I didn't feel so, I was a lot more expansive about how I loved the person. I don't know if that makes sense. And I think I ended the relationship because of the project too, because I just feel the flow of love, so I wasn't that attached to, it was great, and then it was over. And I think in the past I might have stayed in the relationship longer, but, just, I don't know how it sounds, but I'm in this continuous flow of love, and I have a lot more faith that, it just wasn't working out. Actually, it wasn't working out with the project as far as I like to be on the road a lot with this work, and it wasn't cool with the relationship. It started to not work out. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Maybe we'll take one more question. Oh, 2 more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
I was just wondering what your work, what you found out about, I guess, human nature and how we love as humans, and I guess what that means for the human race, I guess.
It's a big question, and one thing that I have to say about the human race is, just the difference between men and women about love. Not, and I hate to stereotype, but I just feel like, women were a lot more receptive. Of course, it's woman to woman, but, I've had love affairs with women, and, I think it crosses over because it's a highly charged situation. You get to meet with this person, and there's all this excitement, and I just feel like women were a lot more receptive to what was happening in the moment, whereas, and I love men, so it's not criticism of men, but I feel like men had a lot more, and of course it's a male-female thing, a lot more expectations about what love meant and how it should be, which I thought was really interesting. And I think it's less so the younger they are, so I feel like that must be a change culturally, that the younger the men were that I dealt with, the more receptive they were. And the older they were, the more formed. But that was not true of the older women. The older women were just as receptive as the younger women. So I think that's really interesting. But, the biggest thing, and it's not true of everybody, but, enough people for me to think of, people who really feel like they have not been seen in love, people who've been in many relationships, and they felt like they had this opportunity, and they would tell me these secrets that they never told anybody, which, people tell bartenders and things like that too, but I just thought that was so interesting that they felt like they had this opportunity to really be seen, and it was such a small instance. So, I found that, maybe like 7 out of 10 times, people had something that they wanted to tell me that they had never told anybody, which I thought was really interesting, that people were in relationships and were withholding this information from their lovers who didn't feel safe in some way. So, but I mean, I could answer that question for a long time, but those are two things I think of off the top of my head. So, yeah.
Okay, one more.
Okay.
You said after you began this work, like after the first 20 times, it changed your life, and you described some things that happened in your career. But I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about what some of the processes were that went on inside of you. How did you see yourself change?
I definitely seen it change in the beginning, and then really kept exponentially going on that one path. Was in the beginning, of course, I'm an artist and in the art world. I definitely started the project because I did feel like, well, I'm really good at love, and it will be really, kind of funny and outrageous. And in the beginning, I was into that, and we all know, I assume a lot of you are artists also, it's just like the sensation of it. I got a lot of attention for the sensation of it. And in the beginning, I was more interested in pushing the envelope, like sexually, or even if it wasn't actual physical intimacy, that was about. It was about seduction. I mean, because that's what love was at the time. And that became really quickly apparent to me that we actually jump over a lot of love and a lot of intimacy by getting into a flirtation or into some kind of sexual intimacy. Not that sexual intimacy isn't love and can't be love, but actually you can be more in your head and less present while you're having sex than you could have been in presence in it. And that is really true, so especially if it's awkward or people are tense. So I was like, wow, there's actually this in-between zone where people are really vulnerable and you can really love them, and that vulnerability is actually more interesting and it's more close. And I think that totally changed my view of inside myself, because what I thought going into it was love, and what I thought qualified me to be this artist who fell in love with people, it was actually kind of a, I don't know if it was a sham, but it was definitely a major part of that was an illusion on my part. So, so that, you can see how that would completely change my life. And I think the work got so interesting after that. People, got a lot more out of it and went a lot deeper, so.
People have you loved?
I haven't counted because it's gotten kind of different lately, but at some point it was over 1,000 people. I mean, it's definitely, it was maybe 1,200 or, 1,300 people or something like that over 10 years. So it's not that much, but, there are some years where there's a lot of people, and there's other years, when I was really actively traveling in the art world, I was seeing a lot of people, like in a month, I would see a couple of hundred people, but then I wouldn't see anybody for a while, so it's definitely, somewhere in the low 1,000.
You have to add like 30 people.
Yeah, both of you, definitely.
All right.
It
So
was really funny.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.